In the spring of 2025, the Trump administration unveiled a sweeping new initiative, one they claimed would protect American industry and restore the nation's economic strength. The plan was announced with great fanfare from the White House, promising to put American workers and businesses first in a rapidly changing global landscape. Central to this plan was a dramatic shift in trade policy. The administration imposed a 25% tariff on all goods coming from Canada and Mexico, America's closest trading partners. At the same time, tariffs on Chinese goods were raised to 20%, sending shockwaves through international markets and border crossings. The stated goal was clear: shield American jobs from foreign competition and spark a new era of domestic manufacturing. The administration argued that these tariffs would encourage companies to hire more American workers and invest in local factories, reviving communities that had suffered from decades of outsourcing. Officials claimed the tariffs would not only bring jobs back home, but also serve as a powerful tool to punish countries accused of illegal migration and the flow of fentanyl into the United States. The message was tough: play by America's rules or pay the price. After a brief pause for tense negotiations with trading partners, the tariffs went into full effect. Ports, warehouses, and border crossings braced for the impact as the new rules reshaped the flow of goods. America was making a bold statement. It would put itself first, no matter the cost. The rest of the world would have to adapt to this new reality as the United States redrew the lines of global trade. The idea behind the plan was simple: make foreign goods more expensive, and American companies would have a stronger incentive to produce at home. Shoppers would see more Made in USA labels, and local businesses would, in theory, thrive. But in today's world, manufacturing is rarely confined to one country. Modern products are the result of complex international collaboration, with parts and expertise coming from all over the globe. The global economy is a vast web of supply chains, where components cross borders multiple times before reaching the final consumer. Disrupting this network can have far-reaching consequences, affecting everything from prices to jobs. These tariffs weren't just a tax on foreign goods, they became a tax on the entire system. Businesses faced higher costs, complicated paperwork, and new uncertainties about where and how to source their materials. American companies like Ford, which rely on a steady flow of parts from around the world, suddenly found themselves caught in the crossfire. Their survival depended on the very supply chains now under threat. In trying to fix the system, the administration had thrown a massive wrench into the gears of American industry, leaving businesses, workers, and consumers to grapple with the consequences of a new economic reality. Before the tariffs hit, industry leaders sounded the alarm. They gathered in boardrooms and at press conferences, voicing their concerns to anyone who would listen. The mood was tense and the stakes were high. These were not just routine warnings. These were urgent pleas from the people who knew the industry inside and out. Ford CEO, Jim Farley, warned that a 25% tariff on Canadian and Mexican goods would devastate U.S. industry. He explained that the impact would ripple far beyond Ford, threatening suppliers, workers, and even local communities that depend on the auto sector for jobs and economic stability. GM's CFO echoed the warning. If tariffs became permanent, they'd consider moving plants out of the U.S. The message was clear. These policies could force American icons to look elsewhere, putting thousands of jobs at risk and undermining decades of investment in American manufacturing. A policy meant to protect American manufacturing could actually drive factories away. Instead of strengthening the industry, it threatened to hollow it out, leaving empty plants and lost livelihoods in its wake. The North American auto industry operates as a single, integrated system. Cars and parts cross borders multiple times before reaching the showroom floor, making collaboration between countries essential for efficiency and competitiveness. A car assembled in Michigan might have an engine from Mexico and a transmission from Canada. Every vehicle is a product of international teamwork, with each country contributing vital components and expertise. Tariffs didn't just add cost, they attacked the foundation of modern car making. Suddenly, every cross-border part became more expensive, and the entire system was thrown into chaos. Farley's warning was literal. Supply chains would be severed, parts would dry up, and production would halt. The flow of materials that kept factories humming would be interrupted, leading to shortages and costly delays. Costs would skyrocket, and American companies would lose their global edge. Higher prices would be passed on to consumers, making U.S. cars less competitive both at home and abroad. The very people the policy was meant to help were begging for it to stop. Workers, unions, and executives all joined together, united in their opposition to the tariffs, fearing for their futures. But the warnings were ignored. Decision-makers turned a blind eye, convinced that tough talk and protectionism would solve the problem, even as evidence mounted that the opposite was true. The industry braced for impact. Anxiety spread from the factory floor to the executive suite, as everyone waited to see just how bad the damage would be. The self-inflicted wound was coming. A blow not just to the industry, but to the communities and families who depended on it. The consequences would be felt for years to come. The tariffs hit, and prices soared. For car buyers, it was like seeing the price of a cheeseburger triple overnight. Analysts predicted tariffs would add $1,000 to $9,000 to the price of a new car. The America First policy hit American wallets hardest. Tariffs are taxes, and companies pass those costs to consumers. A 25% tariff on a Canadian transmission? You paid for it. For popular SUVs, price hikes top $10,000. The auto supply chain is complex. Parts cross borders multiple times, getting taxed at each stop. It was a compounding disaster, a tax on a tax on a tax. The result? Car dealerships became museums of unaffordable artifacts. The policy meant to make America great again made it much more expensive for Americans to buy a car. The dream of a new family car became a nightmare. To see why Ford was hit so hard, look at its supply chain. Ford's North American network is a plate of spaghetti, not a neat map. The Ford Super Duty's diesel engine is made in Mexico. The Corvette's transmission comes from Canada. These aren't minor parts. They're essential. Tariffs punished Ford for a business model built on NAFTA's promise of efficiency. In 2024, the US imported 8 million vehicles, over half from Canada and Mexico. Auto parts trade between the three countries is worth hundreds of billions. Tariffs posed a bigger threat than even major union strikes. Ford's business depended on seamless cross-border flow. The tariffs turned that lifeline into a noose. Parts were delayed, costs exploded, and production became chaos. Ford was penalized for the very efficiency that kept it competitive. The government's plan backfired, badly. Wall Street hates uncertainty. When the tariff plan was announced, Ford, GM, and Stellantis stocks nosedived. Investors saw higher costs, disrupted production, and lower sales. The market's verdict: this policy would do more harm than good. Falling stock prices made it harder for automakers to invest in the future. The tariffs threatened millions of American jobs, not just in factories, but across the supply chain. When production slowed, it wasn't just profits at risk, it was workers' livelihoods. The pain crossed borders. Canada warned of recession and 1 million jobs at risk. A policy meant to save jobs was threatening them everywhere. The integrated system was unraveling. You can't protect one part without hurting the whole. When the US punched, Canada and Mexico didn't just stand by, they punched back, hard and fast, determined to show they wouldn't be bullied by their powerful neighbor. Canada's Prime Minister called the tariffs a very dumb thing to do, making it clear that Canada would not take the move lightly. In response, Canada imposed $155 billion in retaliatory tariffs, targeting a wide range of American products from steel to maple syrup, and even household goods. Canada's strategy was calculated. They targeted politically sensitive American goods, products from swing states and key industries, while also threatening to cut off vital exports like electricity and nickel, resources the US relies on. Mexico, meanwhile, drew up its own list of American products to target, focusing on agricultural goods, machinery, and other exports that would hit American farmers and manufacturers where it hurt most. Both countries coordinated their efforts, vowing to inflict maximum pain and send a clear message to Washington. The conflict was no longer just about tariffs, it was about national pride and economic survival. Trade wars are never one-sided. Every action has a reaction, and the ripple effects quickly spread across borders, disrupting supply chains and business relationships built over decades. US tariffs were the first shot. Canada and Mexico's retaliation was inevitable, a direct response to protect their own economies and workers. The result was a rapidly escalating conflict that hurt businesses and consumers in all three countries. Prices rose, uncertainty grew, and many small businesses struggled to survive. American farmers, already facing tough times, now found their produce taxed in Mexico, making it harder to compete and sell their goods abroad. US manufacturers too saw their goods blocked in Canada, with shipments delayed or turned away at the border, leading to layoffs and lost revenue. The America First policy quickly became America Alone, as former allies began to look elsewhere for trade partners and alliances. Angry neighbors were now working together to undermine the US economy, forging new deals and partnerships that excluded American interests. The trade war was spiraling out of control, with markets in turmoil and experts warning of long-term damage to North America's economic stability. Economists weren't surprised. Nobody wins a trade war. It's not chess. It's a bar fight where everyone gets hurt. The logic is simple. Trade barriers disrupt supply chains, raise costs, and lead to higher prices. Tariffs might save a few jobs in one industry, but destroy more elsewhere. Saving one steel job might cost 3 in an auto plant. The fallout was predicted: job losses, recession, and economic disaster for all sides. Retaliatory tariffs hit American farmers, pork producers, and manufacturers. The pain spread far beyond Detroit. The idea that tariffs would bring jobs home was flawed. Companies could just move operations to Asia or Europe instead. Instead of reshoring jobs, the tariffs risked driving them further away. The experts' warnings were coming true. The backlash wasn't just national, it got personal at the local level. Canadian provinces took matters into their own hands. Nova Scotia banned US companies from government contracts. Ontario considered an export levy on electricity and cancelled a major contract with an American firm. These weren't just gestures, they were real economic hits. The tariffs frayed close cross-border relationships. Businesses suddenly found themselves caught in political crossfire. The integrated North American economy was being dismantled piece by piece. Fragmentation created a patchwork of rules and retaliation. Supply chains were crippled by 1,000 cuts. The trade war had metastasized into chaos. In the end, Ford's collapse was a case study in unintended consequences. A policy meant to protect jobs led to layoffs and plant closures. The auto industry was weakened, prices soared, and allies became adversaries. Ford's crisis wasn't about foreign competition, it was about a government policy that misunderstood modern manufacturing. Tariffs became a sledgehammer to the supply chains Ford relied on. The fallout spread, stocks crashed, allies retaliated, and everyone suffered. There were no winners, only losers. America lost jobs, purchasing power, and trust. The attempt to build a fortress only imprisoned the economy. Ford became a symbol of the folly of protectionism. Good intentions weren't enough. Economic policy needs reality, not slogans. Rebuilding will be far harder than tearing it all down.